Thank you so much for this entire year of engagement, and hopefully in the coming 2026 we'll continue this conversation. So this afternoon we will be discussing our 2026 cyber threat prediction, followed by how Fortinet is helping organizations to be resilient in the midst of all what's happening in terms of uncertainty and the threats that we are experiencing right now. So without any further ado, I would now pass on to Jonas. Thank you again.
Thanks, and please round of applause for Melissa. She always organizes these events amazingly. All the great food we have and the facility. Thank you so much. Yes, so before we start, I would like to do a small recap about what happened in 2025, what we're doing today, where we are. Because when my department at FortiGuard Labs, which is the intelligence department at Fortinet, looks at the current threats about what is most likely going to happen in the next year, we look at the current data, we look at what's happening right now. Because one thing which doesn't happen is that on the 31st of December in 2025, all the cyber criminals will say, you know what everything worked in 2025 will stop and do something completely different in 2026 just because it's a different year. That's not the case, right? So what is the case is they look at what is actually working right now and how can they improve their cyber attacks. Now, when we look about the current landscape of the cybercrime generations, it is quite interesting to see where we came from and where we are today, because there are very clear trends over the last couple of decades. I remember very well in the year 2000 to 2010, this was my teenager years. This is when I got my first computer and I was exploring the internet. The internet was very different back then, right? It looked different. I was definitely one of these script kiddies. I downloaded everything from the internet and just run it on my computer. Fortunately, there was not so many consequences I would have today, otherwise my computer would probably be infected way more times. But it was about the interest for me being a hacker, in understanding what is happening out there. And when we look at cyber criminals back then, or even at researchers, they started with manual malware development. Very similar like software engineers, they started to develop a lot of software, and on the malicious side we saw individuals developing malware. Basic automation tools were used back then to make life a little bit more efficient and to speed up specific processes, but compared to what we have today, it was extremely basic. What we already saw back then is like early infrastructure of botnet communication channels. So a botnet consists usually of two components. One is the command and control system. You can imagine that as a big computer which connects to a lot of different small computers. And a botnet can be used in a vast majority of different ways. One way it's used to launch attacks, like these DDoS attacks you often hear about. This can be running from a botnet, right? And when we look back about this time, we already saw some developments over the next 10 years, so things started to develop quite aggressively. I joined Fortinet in 2016. For those of you who are already writing about tech articles, cyber attacks in 2017, probably you all covered plenty of interest about WannaCry back then. I remember it very well because I just joined Fortinet and then WannaCry happened and everyone, even people who didn't really deal with cybersecurity for us, me, hey, have you seen about this WannaCry? My computer is not working anymore. Everything is locked down. So around 10 to 15 years ago, we started to see really the second generation of mass distribution when it came to cybercrime. We saw organized crime groups starting to be established. These organized crime groups started to operate like normal businesses. I remember when I installed my first Microsoft Word license, I just got a key, I deployed it in my Word account, and then I was able to use this product forever. Not too much longer than Microsoft Office 365 started to enroll, which is like a subscription fee which you pay on a yearly basis. Cyber criminals were thinking, this is a really smart approach how we could make more money as well. So cybercrime actors started to provide crime as a service. And then they were wondering what crime as a service would sell best. So they started to provide phishing as a service, botnet as a service, ransomware as a service. So they encouraged a lot of individuals going to them because they own the platform, and they encourage them saying, you don't need to write your own phishing emails, just tell us who you want to attack and we give you a template which you can send out them and you give us part of the revenue cut. So these were the early stages of these criminal organizations. And I remember one in 2000, when the war between Russia and Ukraine started in the early 2020s, there was a big corruption, a big organized crime group called the Conti ransomware group, operating out of Russia, that they got hacked by Ukrainian researchers, and they found out that this organization, they work like normal businesses. They had a CEO, they had account managers with sales quotas, they office rental space in Moscow. They went on holidays, they usually work during office hours, so they went to the office at 8 o'clock, left at 5 p.m., they had holidays. The biggest difference from them to all of us is they worked for a malicious environment, a malicious community. But other than that, these businesses really became organized crime and operated accordingly. Underground markets started to become a bigger place as well, and they play a tremendous role today, like these darknet marketplaces. Like my team is focusing on that quite tremendously, because there's the internet, which all of us can access, and there's also the darknet. To be honest with you, the darknet sounds more fancy than it actually is, because all you gotta do is use a different browser, and 95% is about buying drugs and weapons online. But for cyber criminals, they found out that if they use the darknet, it's a more anonymous way to host their infrastructure, and they encourage some sort of trading. And while it was in the beginning, when you think back about Silk Road, about selling weapons and drugs, for cyber criminals, they started to sell access to environments. They started to buy malware. They started to researchers found vulnerabilities and started selling them instead of providing them to the vendors. Like one good example is if you're a security researcher and you find a vulnerability today in the Apple iOS iPhone, where with one single SMS you take control over this whole phone, you can go to Apple and they probably give you $1 million reward if you disclose it to them. If you go to these underground forums and sell it to shady organizations, you probably get 10 to 20 million. So the reward became much bigger, and this kind of ecosystem where people start to sell and trade these kind of information became very popular. Like today, one of the biggest challenges we face is that cyber criminals are starting to become experts on specific tasks of a whole attack. Initial access brokers are individual people who purely focus on breaking into an organization and stop there and selling it to someone else. So what they do is they look at new vulnerabilities. Like for example, a lot of vendors, the most popular one is probably Microsoft, once a month during Patch Tuesday, an amazing event where they announce all the different vulnerabilities around their platform, so people on the defensive side, on us, can upgrade it. They announce these vulnerabilities. What these initial access brokers are doing is they look at the vulnerability, at the patch, reverse engineer it, find the weakness, and scan the internet for older systems and break into them. So they get access to organizations, but they're not the one carrying out the ransomware attack, or doing business email compromise, or exfiltrate all the sensitive information. They don't care about that. The only thing they do is they break into the organization and they say, we stop here, we want to monetize that, and sell this access maybe for $1,000 or $2,000. Today they even auction it. They say, I have access to a Fortune 500 company in the financial sector, 20 billion revenue a year, who is willing to pay that much money? And then other cyber criminals like ransomware groups who are much more sophisticated and go way further, because now they need to compromise the whole environment, do a lot of work which can take months, if not even years. They will buy this kind of actions, or to some degree it's even auctioned out. So it's really an industry where the cyber criminals start to focus on very specific tasks, because when you do something over and over again, you become really good at it, really being a specialized individual on a specific activity, and that's what they started to realize and started to do. Now in 2025, we're in the middle between 2020 and 2030, we have like this third generation of AI-enabled scale. And we hear a lot about AI attacks all the time. And I want this to be taken a little bit cautiously, because AI is a big buzzword today, and we're not at a stage where an attacker has one AI tool, he clicks one button, and then the AI tool is fully autonomous and causes a lot of damage and harm to everyone. AI tools, they are being used as a tool to make their life more efficient and more effective. It also lowers the barrier to enter cybercrime. It's very similar like when I use AI tools on a daily basis. Like every time I travel around the region, I cover Asia Pacific and the Middle East, I go to different countries and I need to be informed of what is happening in this country. So I read a lot of reports, and in the past it took a tremendous amount of time. Like if I come about the report with 40 pages these days, I can use an AI tool like Google Notebook. It's a LLM tool which I upload this whole report, and it summarizes the whole report into a 15-minute podcast spoken by 2 robots, 1 female voice, 1 male voice, and while I'm on my bicycle or while I'm in the taxi, I just listen to it. So a lot of these AI tools make my life more efficient. The same way though, it makes cyber criminals' life more efficient. And because it makes it more efficient, it shrinks the attack's life cycle tremendously. If you think about all the time you save using Gemini, using ChatGPT, using Grok, all these AI tools to summarize your article, to do spell checking, to translate it in a different language, the same amount of time it saves for cyber criminals writing phishing campaigns, doing their research about vulnerabilities. And also the barrier is much lower to enter. Like I studied computer science back in the days, and if I look at computer science these days, a lot of people are telling me don't study computer science anymore. Like developers as we used to use them, they're not required in that volume anymore. I'm not sure if I share that sentiment, but what I hear is junior developers these days, assisted with AI tools, they are as capable as senior developers back in the day. So the overall developers needed are less, and with less skills you can achieve more, which makes sense because you have superior technology available. But the same way it enables cyber criminals to use AI tools to carry out attacks which they wouldn't have been capable before. Because even if someone is in the beginning stages of a cybercrime career, if he doesn't know how to develop malware all the way from scratch, he can now use AI tools like legitimate developers use Cursor or Microsoft Copilot in a similar way to achieve his goal with malware. I summarized some of these tools here. Who of you uses like Gemini, ChatGPT, or some sort of AI tool? Few of you, mostly all of them. If you would ask this tool, help me to build a bomb to blow up my neighbor's apartment, would it help you?
No,
No, why?
they blocked it already.
We'll block it because there are guardrails in place, because it's clearly malicious intention. So what are cyber criminals doing? By the way, it's the same way, if you ask these tools, help me to write a phishing email so I can get my neighbor's email account and password so I can log into his bank, it will not help you. What are cyber criminals doing? They see a big market. They're like, why don't we build a similar tool which we can use and sell for anyone to actually give that information? So there are tools out there called Fraud GPT, Worm GPT. So these are deepfake tools and chatbot tools, very, very similar, like we see on the legitimate side. And these tools, they provide the cyber criminals that kind of information they're looking for. Like one which is really interesting to me, and again, the tool itself is not malicious. It's called 11 Labs, like the number 11 Labs. It's an automated phishing and deepfake tool. I remember when this tool came, but this is available on the public internet, you can Google it, you can access it. I bought an account when it came out because during COVID there was a lockdown, a lot of work from home, I did a lot of webinars, and if you put in my name in YouTube, you find a couple of webinars. So I took these webinars and trained it to that system. And that system learns how I speak. I'm originally from Switzerland, so I have a little bit of a German accent when I speak English. Also, I speak rather fast, and then I have some certain pauses after my sentences. And these are all patterns which this tool spots. So the more information I fed to the system, the more webinars I did, the more likely it was able to have the same kind of voice, and then you just send it a transcript, and it's able to read that. But the scary part is I can even translate that in any other language. So all of a sudden I was able to speak Italian, Spanish, like a lot of languages I don't speak. And now it goes even further. It's not just voice, but also video. So if you're someone who's exposed to the internet or has like a politician, podcaster, influencer, all these type of people, there's a lot of public available information of you out there. So you can feed it to these tools, and video becomes really concerning because I'm not gonna lie, I see stuff on X Twitter, which I cannot see, or on Reddit, which I have a really hard time telling, is this actually AI generated or not? Like in the very beginning when all these AI tools came out and we just created a human, you saw 6 fingers, you see the missing ear, and 3 eyes and stuff like that, right? But these days it becomes very sophisticated, technology evolves quite quickly. And I saw some proof of concepts where someone is speaking into a webcam, and on the other side, whoever he's talking to, it's a male person, it's a female person, which moves the same way. It's just a deep fake. And this becomes really interesting for cyber criminals when it's about social engineering attacks. Because imagine someone puts together a profile of me and then goes to my mother or my dad and says, presents a video like, hey, I'm stuck in Manila right now, my flight got cancelled, can you send me $500, my credit card is not working. But it's a video of me talking in my mother tongue to my parents, right? Chances of them falling for the trick increases quite significantly. There's also a lot of tools focusing on exploit development, because exploits are usually vulnerabilities in software which can be exploited to get access to the deeper level of the operating system. And all of that stuff is being traded on marketplaces. And you can see, you can do like subscriptions. You pay $100 monthly, it's less than the ChatGPT Pro, right? It's like $250. And you get all of these services available. And I logged into one of them just to show you how it looks like. I don't know why they made such a fancy background, but pretty much this is that AI chatbot. And what I did is I asked it, send me the most successful phishing alerts used in 2024. Because these tools are trained by malicious campaigns in the past, and they look at the data which worked. So they look at all their phishing campaigns, and not the ones where it's I'm a prince from Nigeria and I want to donate 100 million, whoever replies to my email will get it, right? That's the one which doesn't work. But the one which worked are the ones which have a clear urgency inside, like for example, you get a package delivery, you need to pay $2 for tax, otherwise we will not deliver it to your place. Or in some occasion it's about urgent email from IT. If you don't do it, you will be logged out from your computer. So they really help you with templates to create it, and then you can say, okay, I like that kind of style. Please create an email targeting a Fortune 500 company. Avoid topics that include package delivery, overdue account, but be creative and make it detailed. So these tools then, they don't have the guardrails in place. And for cyber criminals, using these tools is first of all, again, lowering the barrier to enter, but also they become way more efficient. So what might have taken them a day or two to prepare, now they can do it in a couple of minutes, which means they have the other 8 hours a day available for other malicious activity. So this is really how cybercrime became such an industry. We have, on the one hand, we have the AI vendors. They have automation in place to make things more efficient. We have the access brokers, so the people who specialize on specific campaigns and break into the environments, then sell it off to others. There's the money launderers as well, which help you with botnet as infrastructure. They help you even during ransomware campaign. They help you with negotiating the money. If you extract the money, they will help you to money launder it, so you will not be caught later. And this whole converged crime, we have these resellers, really shows how established and professional, mature the cybercrime industry has become. And that's something all of us are dealing with them. On top of that this is just cybercrime. So when we look at all the malicious activity on the internet, when we talk about hackers in general, they're like two different groups. On one hand, we have the cyber criminals, so individuals or organizations who are mainly financially motivated, but we also have the APT group, the nation-state sponsored groups, the very sophisticated hackers. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat Groups. For example, there are a lot of them all over the world, like in Korea, for example, North Korea, we have the Lazarus group, we have a bunch of them in Russia, a bunch of them in China. They're pretty much everywhere. It depends always who you ask. Some people would probably argue the NSA group is one as well, if they're an enemy of the US, right? But for us, this is an ally, so we don't consider them as an APT, of course. But APT groups are organizations, hackers, who are working in the interest of a government. And depending what the government wants for you, these attackers are extremely sophisticated and carry out a lot of attacks as well. So when we look at the predictions, which we made 1 year ago, we said in FORTINET, yeah, there will be definitely more AI operationalization, so more Gen AI. Gen AI will help automating and phishing scripts. That's definitely something which we see. But again, this is not just something which stops. So even though we make these predictions on a yearly basis, it's more of a flow, which sometimes goes a couple of years further, because the way technology evolves on the good side, the same way it develops on the malicious side. Crime as a service is definitely becoming more and more mature and more integrated as well, which means they want to connect different kind of marketplaces together as well. So for the end user who wants to carry out cyber attacks, he has like one partner to go to, and he's like talking to different kind of people in the industry which are helping them to carry out their attack. Then data as a currency became quite a big thing as well, because while ransomware was really hot for the last couple of years, it's still a big case, but a lot of organizations decide not to pay. So threat actors are changing their game and say, if you don't pay us, not only do you not get your money back, but we also start to sell your personal data, which might have implication with regulators. You might be very sensitive about the data, you might get in trouble with your own clients. So the amount of data that's being monetized and reached at a scale is quite tremendous. And also healthcare environments and critical infrastructure environments we predicted becoming more and more of a target. Healthcare environments are interesting because in the very early stages of ransomware, people expected hospitals not be part of attacks because even cybercrime groups have specific ethics and they don't want people to die just to make a bit of money. But a lot of that stuff unfortunately was thrown out of the window. Things became much more aggressive and a lot of hospitals are being attacked as well. And operational technology environments, which are our environments to run the critical infrastructure for our nations, are obviously a big target, because once an attacker gets access to a critical network infrastructure, it puts him in an extremely powerful situation. Now for 2026, we heard it in the introduction earlier from JJ, we strongly believe that two driving forces. One is the industrialization of cybercrime, and the other one is the acceleration of the attack lifecycle. And both of them definitely are fueled by the AI technologies which we see out there. Now, when we look at the offensive capabilities, I come from offensive security, and whenever I was doing some sort of hacking, I follow a specific procedure. The first thing I always do is reconnaissance. Before I do anything, I do as much reconnaissance about my potential target as possible. You can think of this similarly. If your goal would be to break into your neighbor's apartment, you would not just walk there, try to open the door and walk in, right? If your goal would be to make money to steal his watch collection or something in his apartment, first you would take some time to actually look at his apartment. At what time is he at home? Does he live alone? Is there a CCTV camera at the house? Does he have dogs? Is there a certain time of the day when his kids goes to school and he brings them to school? Is he actually locking the main door? Or maybe there's a balcony where there's a window which is always open. So in cybercrime, it's the same thing. You want to inspect your target as much as possible, because the more you look at something, the more likely you'll find a weakness and you come up with a plan. Now, in the developments for 2026, what we think is going to happen, we have all the AI tools already which are being developed, but this big thing of agents being, it's a hot topic right now. So we believe that there will be many more autonomous agents executing on the attack kill chain starting from the reconnaissance phase. What that means is, if you put any kind of service on the internet, let's say you buy a website, a domain, and you want to host your own blog to publish some articles. As soon as you buy this domain and you put it online, there are systems out there, and this is already happening since a couple of years, but this is like scanning new IP addresses to understand what is actually happening on this IP address. So you see a domain name, you see what kind of service is running, for example, WordPress or whatever else you're on. The system immediately scans what kind of version is it, then it checks this version against specific databases if there are known vulnerabilities, because it might be outdated. If it finds vulnerabilities, it tries to automatically exploit them immediately, get access to that system, so you have access to the server which was just initially published. So it's even more important that security is always top of mind and part of the beginning of the process. Because one of the big problems we have with the internet, security was not top of mind. It was not implemented at the stage one. It came at the later stage, and that's why we're at such a difficult spot right now, where we implemented security at the later place, and it's oftentimes leads to a lot of problems. When we look at exploits as well, this is something which I think will make cyber criminals use AI very effectively, is to look at all the data. Just think about your own data, which you use for writing most of your articles, like the amount of pictures you have, the amount of drafts you have, the amount of revisions you have on your own laptop, like hundreds of folders of files and everything. Like if I would look at, go to this laptop there right now and log through all the hard drive, I would find so many files, and until I actually find something which is useful for me, will probably take a lot of time, because first of all, I don't know the data structure, I don't really know what I'm looking for, I don't know where it's stored. And for cyber criminals who break into a big corporate environment and exfiltrate a terabyte of data, you can imagine what kind of data that looks like. It's a mess, right? It's so much data. What is AI extremely strong in is finding the needle in the haystack. Like, if attackers then are capable of using AI tools and sending all this data to the AI tool and asking it, what is actually the sensitive data in here? What can I use this data for to monetize it, for example? AI can scan that much quicker and find the needle in the haystack. For example, in FORTINET, we use AI as well to find out in our systems if something is wrong in our environment. So in the past, if I get a ticket as an administrator and someone tells me, I have really issues connecting to this one server, it's really slow, then there's a lot of troubleshooting to be made, right? Step by step. So an administrator needs to do it. Now with AI capabilities, we have agents in our solutions where the agent itself learns the request, says, okay, something is slow. So most likely, from previous experience, it might be that something is wrong with the server. So the AI agent goes on the server and sees what are the processes running, is there some sort of crypto miner installed? If that's the case, what kind of IP address is it communicating to? So it finds the IP address, it learns from threat intelligence that it's part of a botnet campaign, and all these kind of steps are being automated and done by AI based on the data we trained it with. And I think the cyber criminals will do a similar thing. They will have so much data available, and instead of spending hours and hours on them themselves, they will use AI tools to really learn and figure out how to monetize that kind of data and what is valuable and what is not. When it comes to monetization, we strongly believe as well that OT manufacturing and healthcare will be, there already are, but even more attractive for ransomware as a service. Like I mentioned earlier, I covered the Middle East as well, and just earlier in the beginning of the year, our team released a report about a very significant attack happening in the Middle East from an Iranian APT group. So again, APT groups, these are probably the most sophisticated hackers out there. You can think of them like the elite hackers, because on one hand, they have a lot of resources available, and oftentimes the people they have in their environment, they're trained by the government. If they're very good in math at the young age on, they're being motivated to join their organizations, become a hacker for the government, right? And this was a campaign we followed for over 2 years, where we saw attackers getting access to the network, taking over 1 year once they have access inside the network just to establish that foothold, staying stealthy under the network. And when we look at critical network infrastructure, this is really the environment which our society runs on. Like, this can be the difference whether you have electricity or not. This can be the difference whether the water which comes out of your shower is being toxic or not, right? So attackers want to put themselves in the most powerful position possible, and a really powerful position to be in is a hospital, is an operation technology environment. Because if they blackmail you, if you don't pay us the money we're looking for, then these are the effects, and they're very devastating. It's much more likely someone is going to pay. So we definitely think this will be more targeted. And then as well, when we look at all the developments which are always happening in real life, have a tremendous impact on what's happening in cyberspace. Like when the war between Russia and Ukraine started many, many years ago, we discovered that there was much more malware out there which is destructive. Usually malware in the past, it was more about making money or exfiltrating data. But if you go very back, we had Stuxnet in 2011, where also some global organizations, global governments deployed some malware, some sabotage malware in the Iranian nuclear center and blew up the whole thing. Between Russia and Ukraine, we saw a lot of these malwares being developed now, because Russia didn't attract Ukraine or vice versa on cyber and asked to blackmail for money while they're physically battling on the battlefield. What they want to do is they bring down the telecommunication channels. Like Russia brought down all the internet telecommunication in the Ukraine at the beginning of the war, so they couldn't communicate with them anymore, so they have a huge advantage. And we saw this kind of malware being implemented then in cybercrime activities, where cyber criminals, they deploy ransomware, and instead of having a timer where at the end it tells you if it reaches 0, instead of paying 3 million in Bitcoin, now you need to pay 6 million, so they just double the amount. They say, if it's not paid by the timer, we deploy wiper malware, which completely deletes all of your computers. So you just need to rebuild everything. So you have one chance and one chance only. It's up to you. If you don't want to pay, consider the damages. And when we see what happened now between Israel and the Hamas group, for example, how Israel organization was capable of blowing up all these pagers, right? It's tremendous to see what technology and firmware corruption techniques are capable of. And we believe that we will see more of that in the future as well, because everything kind of becomes technology, everything is connected, and whatever is connected will be attacked. If it's not properly secured and security was not top of mind, most likely will be hacked. But if it's connected, it will be attacked very, very quickly. So in 2026, it will be definitely more. We still have more AI to come, and it will be a little bit more purposely built. Like we already see AI in the vast majority of attacks being part as a tool, which makes life better and more easy and efficient. It will definitely find its place in more purposely built. Like extremely similar what we see on the legitimate business side, right? In the beginning, we had all these chat bots. We had ChatGPT, then Gemini, then Grok, like all of them. And they were like a chat tool, like quite for a wide majority of cases. And now we have organizations who build AI solutions for specific tasks, like these agents, which are specific trained for one single capability. So it's definitely more purpose-built. And I think this will show then in the end the impact when we look at offense and defense, because obviously at FORTINET we have a tremendous amount of defense. We want to build security layers which will help everyone to be secure. And if we look at this battle against the offense, what the offensive security is first of all, you need to do reconnaissance, you need to get access to an environment, and they want to monetize it if they're financially motivated. On the defensive side, we need to detect attacks. So if someone is attacking us, we need to prevent them. And if someone is inside our network, we need to detect it, we need to contain it, which means isolate the infected devices, and we need to disrupt the attack. And if you look at this game, this has been a cat and mouse game which has been going on for a very, very long time. The issue is if these guys start to use a lot of AI, and these guys are known, it's not a fair battle anymore, right? So this really shows why a lot of organizations are encouraging so many AI solutions in their portfolio now, because if one party is attacking with AI and we're not defending with AI capabilities, it makes it much more difficult. I want to show this on an example later, but when we talk about defending on machine speed, we can also use AI technologies to figure out what is most likely how someone will hit us. Because one big advantage which organizations should have over the attacker, we should know our environment better than someone else. It's like if someone breaks physically into your house, if I ask you, where's your soap in your place, you probably know exactly what it is, where's your watch, where's your passport, you know where everything is, right, in your own home, or roughly where it is. I also sometimes search my passport before I leave and get a little stressed out, but I should know which kind of area it should be. If someone would break into my apartment and the goal would be to find my passport as quickly as possible, it would probably take him much more time than it would take me. The same way it works in cyber. If someone breaks into an organization, everything looks quite new. They don't really know where the servers are, how the network is segmented, etc. But we on the defensive side, we should know how are we actually looking inside, how are we exposed to the internet, what kind of assets do we have, what's most likely to be attacked, or the vulnerabilities. So when we can take that kind of framework and use AI technology and say, hey, this is how it looks like, what is most likely that an attacker is going to attack us? We can make an assessment, we can validate whether it is actually true, then improve it, and then respond to it. So a lot of these technologies, it's really a double-edged sword where it really depends who uses them, but if we use them correctly, it can make our environment way more secure as well, so it's a huge improvement. Now, this is my last slide, but this is just one example which I would like to highlight, and this is back from really thinking from an offensive security point of view. So sometimes people ask me, Jonas, how would you break into any organization? What would be your go-to? And of course, my answer would be it depends, but the first thing I would like to understand is the process of an organization. So I'll give you an example. If someone would give me the task, I would be a red teaming environment, a pen test, and my goal would be to break into my own organization, to FORTINET. How would I do it? What I would do is I would go to our website and I will look for open positions, like jobs.fortinet.com. And I will see, that's by the way how I applied for this position, that's why I know it so well. I see that at some point I need to put in my name and upload my CV to the website. So the hacker mindset is, what is happening with this CV, with this document which I upload to this website? And by design, at some point, someone in HR will download this document at a later stage, right, to check whether I'm a good fit for that specific position. So I already found one way to communicate with someone indirectly inside the organization and find a way to send him a document. Some organizations, they go via recruiters, that's another way. If you don't deal with any HR department and your target is more likely to be the finance department, you could probably create a fake invoice pretending you invoice someone for a specific service and add a document. But the attacker mindset is, how can I start to communicate and get access to the environment? So if I would do that, create a CV, have some malicious code inside, someone opens it in HR, what would happen is someone in the HR department would download the CV, and on this computer, there will be some execution. So I will use some PowerShell tools to establish initial access. Now the problem in most organizations is that there's way too many alerts. Like from a technical point of view, I can tell you that because I was a system administrator before as well. If I look at all the alerts generated on a daily basis, it's a tremendous amount of alerts if you have thousands of employees, right? So what do you focus on and what not? So what we like to do is we have specific playbooks in place, and this is really a game changer in my opinion. I have a sports background. I grew up playing ice hockey, and in most sports, if you're attacking or defending, whether this is basketball, baseball, or whatever, there are different strategies for one part of the game than the other one. So what we like to do is we have playbooks in place. So for example, if I have a playbook from an automation tool which says, whenever I see, for example, PowerShell execution on an HR computer, this is something which usually should not happen. And this comes back to that we need to know our organization better than the attacker. Because PowerShell execution, that's a tool, like a script tool, which is usually used by an IT administrator to automate some processes. It's not done by HR usually. It's probably also not done by finance. So you can start having these playbooks in place. You can have hundreds of playbooks sorted here where they say, whenever I see something like this happening, it doesn't mean someone breached my organization, but you already start filtering a lot of these alerts. This is where automation comes in place. So we have playbooks in place, and then we go to the endpoint and say, now I want to know from this specific endpoint, the one which probably clicked on this phishing email or on this document, give me a whole process down. Because if I'm hacking into an environment, the first thing I'm doing before I'm causing any damage, I'm making sure I have persistency on that device, which means I don't want to lose connection. Because if I hack your laptop and you're like, okay, you know what, it's time for lunch, and why don't I reboot my laptop because I have some software updates, I lose the connection because I'm just in memory. So I would try to do immediately something where whenever you restart the computer, I open up a connection to my attacking machine, persistent. So that's what I use PowerShell for. And so I would do some process dumps from that endpoint, but I would also like to know what is happening on the network specifically. Because whenever someone is hacked inside an organization, he needs to communicate with the attacker, like with the command and control server or something like that. So it's all about gathering as much information as possible, and then with that data, this is where threat intelligence comes in really handy, because if you see there's a tremendous amount of data in your organization being exfiltrated to an IP address, this could be another playbook, exfiltration of information. So let's say more than 2 gigabytes of data being exfiltrated outside your organization, you want to check immediately who is this other IP address. If you see this IP address is known part of a botnet campaign, the alarm bells need to go up, right? Because now it's time to really detect that something happened. So this is then again where we can terminate the process, update the security layers, and really make the difference with security layers. In cybersecurity though, there's not just one silver bullet. It's not one solution which solves all your problem. It's also not one AI tool which solves all the problems for the attackers or for the defenders. So the takeaway of the predictions is really while AI is helping to accelerate and make life way more sophisticated and efficient for an attacker, in the end it's just a tool. The person behind the tool has a motivation. He has a good motivation or a malicious motivation. It's the same way if you see a police officer outside with a gun, you're not afraid of him because he uses the gun to protect society. If it's not a police officer, if it's someone who wants to rob you, I'm afraid a lot of this weapon, right? Because all of a sudden the person who uses that tool has malicious intentions. And I think the same thing applies to AI. In the end, it will be a tool. It will be used by both parties with different motivation. But if one party uses it and the other doesn't, then whoever uses it is in a very strong position. And the one true advantage which we have on the development side is AI tools, they need a lot of resources. They need a lot of time to be developed. They need a good understanding. So if we use these tools in a good way, and when we think about our systems and environments, I strongly believe they can make a difference when it comes to a lot of these cyber attacks. So hopefully I was able to give you a little bit an insight about what is happening right now, how we see things moving towards the next year. But again, this is not something where it's just like the cyber criminals all come together, they have a meeting in November, they're like, 2025 was a very successful year for cybercrime. Let's throw everything out of the window and come up with new strategies. So sometimes the easiest answer is what is going to happen in 2026 is what is working in 2025, just a little bit improved, like that there's certain improvements happening. So it's probably not the most exciting news. What some headlines would look like if you could say the newest and trendiest malware being out there, but it's like small increments of improvements, because if we're honest, what cyber criminals are doing these days is working quite well. And to some degree, what works today worked unfortunately already 5 or 6 years ago. So while they're innovating on the defensive side, there's still a lot of things to do to catch up what happened over the years. But hopefully with a lot of progresses and advancements we make on the defensive side as well, we hope we can use these AI tools better than the attackers can, and this will give us a little bit an edge for those who take it very serious. Yeah, that's all for me, from my side. If you have any questions, I'm not sure if you want to do it on the floor or later one-to-one, so yeah, I'll give it back to the moderator.
All right, thank you so much, Jonas, for those key insights.